Hello, my name is Kiana W. Mitchell, and I am the host of the Music and Vibes podcast. We are currently heading into season 5 of the podcast, and what we're going to do for the next few weeks, we are not going to be having new episodes of the podcast. But what I plan to do is every Wednesday, which is when the podcast typically comes out, I'm going to put up an older podcast episode for you to listen to so that you won't forget about me. And I know I miss hanging out with you, and I do not want us to miss each other. So I'm going to put up an older episodes of podcast on Wednesdays on our Facebook page. And on Thursdays, we're going to just come together and talk about different things that I think we need to talk about and discuss. This week, I'm going to call these sessions on Thursdays. I was thinking we could probably call them Let's Talk About It, so that we can sit down and just talk about different issues that people deal with in marriage that people really don't discuss. And what I may do, if I see that there's a lot of interest by you putting things in the comments or messaging me about these different topics, I will make sure that I will make one of these topics one of our podcast episodes so that we can get more information. And I may even find an expert or someone to come and talk to us about it so we can talk about all of these things that can affect your marriage. Today I want to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a mental health condition that occurs in life-threatening situations. Examples of that would be military combat, natural disasters, terrorist incidents, serious accidents, or physical or sexual assault. Approximately 8% of all of the people in the world will experience post-traumatic stress disorder at some point in their lives. Now that number tends to rise for people who are in the military or who have been in combat. Those suffering with post-traumatic stress disorders may experience several different types of symptoms. They may relive the incident. They may have nightmares or night horrors and night terrors where they're constantly reliving the incident and what happened to them. They can have issues of avoidance, like they just stay away from people, things, or places that remind them of this terrible incident or event that happened in their lives. They can have flashbacks, which are not uncommon, and they can also show isolating behaviors where they would just isolate themselves away from the world because they cannot deal with handling what's happening out in the world at that point in time in their lives. There could be numbing where they just feel numb, and they can sometimes try to heal or numb themselves with alcohol or drugs, etc., substance abuse of some sort. They may feel anxiety, feeling on guard, unable to relax, just irritated, irritable, anxious, and startled easily. All of these are characteristics of anxiety. They can have panic attacks when they go out in public or if they have too many people over. Anything that reminds them of that event can cause them to have a panic attack or have serious anxiety. They may have addictive behaviors or participate in addictive behaviors such as excessive gambling, pornography, or substance abuse, just trying to forget about what happened. And sometimes addictive behaviors help you to forget about bad things that have happened to you because you're focusing on something else and you're not dealing with the problem that you currently have. Now, all of these things are things that can happen if someone is experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder. And here's the thing, like post-traumatic stress disorder does not affect one aspect. So it's not just all about mental health. It can affect your marriage. It can affect your friendships and relationships. It can affect work. It can affect a lot of things, your relationships with your kids and family members and co-workers and friends. But today we're going to talk about how it can affect your marriage, and it can have serious effects in your marriage. Now here are some of the ways it can affect your marriage. It can cause problems with trust. It can cause problems with closeness, intimacy, communication, decision-making, and problem-solving. And it often, when you have issues with all of these things and you experience problems with trust or closeness or intimacy, all of these things are important to have in a relationship. All of these things are a must-have if you want to have a healthy, thriving relationship. And if you are not able to do these things because you are experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder, it can cause a huge issue in your marriage. It can cause problems, of course, and it can kind of begin to tear down your marriage and give rise to destruction of your relationship, which is something nobody wants. So, what can you do to help someone who is experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder if it's your spouse, or what can you do for you if you're experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder? Well, here are some things that can be done. Now, the first thing that I always say should be done is go to see a counselor. You would need to see a counselor. Now, it's easy to sit down and figure out what your problem is. Okay, you can kind of self-diagnose yourself if you want to. But the point is, even if you do that, you are not a professional. You cannot get yourself out of this or get the help that you need. You can't give that to yourself, because if you could, you would, and you wouldn't be experiencing these issues. So the thing that I would like to say about counseling is this. If you're sick and you need to go see a doctor, what do? You go to a doctor, and they tell you what the problem is, they help you work on it, they give you medicine, they fix the problem. If you have a toothache, what do? You go to a dentist, because they know what they're doing and they can fix the problem. If you're having problems with your vision, what do? Yes, you go to the eye doctor and they help you fix the problem. So if you're experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder, this is something I would not advise for you to handle on your own. It makes more sense for you to go see a counselor or go see someone who can help you work through these issues, walk through the process. And here's the great thing. It's like you can either go to see a counselor individually, or you and your spouse can go. Or you may want to do both. If you are the person dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, you may want to go see a counselor individually, and then to make sure your marriage is intact or your relationship is intact, you may want to go with your partner to see a counselor so that they can help you with your marriage, and then individually you can work on post-traumatic stress disorder. If you are someone who is married to someone who's experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder, again, you may want to go individually so that you can help that person and know how to support them and help them through this time. And you can also go together as a couple so that you can learn together how to communicate, how to talk, and how to deal with this issue as a couple. So the first thing I would say to do is go to counseling. The second thing that I say to do is be open and honest with your feelings. Sometimes we push our feelings aside because either they're uncomfortable to deal with, or we don't want to start any arguments or create problems. But no, feelings need to be dealt with. And so being open and honest with feelings creates trust. So if your partner who's experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder knows that he or she can come to you when they're feeling anxious or upset or frustrated, or they are reliving these experiences, if they know that they can come to you and you understand, then they can share what they're feeling, and together you guys can work through this. Or if you're the person who's dealing with all of these issues from post-traumatic stress disorder, if you know that you can go to your spouse and share and talk about these things, then you guys are creating trust and you're building a bond and you're working together. So be open and be honest about your feelings and share what's going on with you, because so many times couples do not share what's happening with themselves with their spouse. And you know how that works out? Then it leaves room for people to assume why you're acting this way or assume what is going on. And assumptions are never good. You know the old familiar anecdote or thing everyone says about assumptions. I'm just not going to say it. But assumptions are never good. So you need to talk and communicate. Be open and honest and share your feelings so that there is no room for assumption, and you guys can work on helping each other get through this issue or this problem. Being respectful and compassionate. It takes a lot of patience sometimes to deal with your spouse if they're dealing with certain issues. And the way they may ask for help and support is probably not a way you may understand, because if they're dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, they may get angry. So maybe the way that they are asking for help and support is maybe in an angry way. Or they may be upset or accusatory, whatever it is. It may not be in a way that we will understand, because all we see is, okay, they're just being angry. They're being disrespectful. I don't have to listen to them. They're just fussing all the time. They're whining. They're complaining. That's all we may hear. But what they are doing is asking for your help. They're giving bids for help. They're asking for encouragement and help and support, but they just don't know how to do it. So being respectful is a must, along with being compassionate. Learning and practicing problem solving and communication skills is important so that you guys can communicate and talk about what is going on. Another thing that's important is learning relaxation techniques. and engaging in them alone and together with one spouse. By doing this, you guys are coming together, you're forming a bond, like I said before, but you're also learning how to relax. And it's nice for people to learn how to self-soothe in these situations so that when they feel themselves getting stressed or full of anxiety, they can relax themselves and calm themselves down and bring that situation down. Being compliant with medication, if prescribed, is very important because you're going to need to take this medication to help you get better and to deal with a lot of these issues. So that would be important, to be compliant with medication if prescribed. And finally, avoiding substance abuse or substances such as like drugs, alcohol, gambling, pornography. Anything else that you throw on to this, which is self-destructive, is not going to make it better. It's going to make your PTSD a lot worse. So if you avoid these things, then you can focus on the issue at hand, which is the post-traumatic stress disorder and the event that caused it, rather than having to focus on that and the addiction issue that you've added to that process. So these are just some ways to begin to deal with post-traumatic stress disorder if you are experiencing it or if your spouse is experiencing it, and how you guys can work together so that this is not something that destroys your marriage, but brings you guys closer and help build you guys up as a couple and in your relationship. All right, if you are interested in hearing more about this topic in the upcoming podcast, leave me a message or put it in the comment section, and I'll make sure that I add this topic to season 5. All right, well, guys, I will talk to you next week, and I hope you have a lovely day. All right, bye.